Good afternoon, everyone. It's travel season, so I thought I should do some sort of presentation to you about hostels because I'm somewhat known for traveling here, and a lot of people have asked me, where did you get the money to do this? How did you end up going where you went? And to be honest, a lot of it has been luck and resourcefulness rather than any sort of ostentatious display of wealth that I do not have. And I found that outside of Europe and just slowly in Asia, most people are not really familiar with the hosteling or hostel travel arrangement that exists. And I think that I'm somewhat of a veteran of this kind of facility, partially based out of necessity. I've stayed in, I think, about 65 hostels over the last 8 or 9 years, and I have really enjoyed that format, although it takes a long time to get used to living in a communal setting, even if it's temporarily or in a very transient kind of situation. And just to begin with what a hostel is, it's essentially an informal dormitory with very variable a very variable cast of people coming in and out, I guess you could say, functioning in a hotel format. And it's usually for people who are traveling alone or people who are students or trying to pack in several activities across several cities or countries over an extended period, but who don't want to follow the prepackaged sort of travel arrangement. And essentially, this started in Germany, I think sometime in the late 19th century, early 20th century. And so this is why, to this day, Germany has the highest concentration of hostels in the world, to my knowledge. By population, maybe it's the Netherlands by now, I'm not sure of that. But the most typical use of them in their most traditional format is for student traveling groups. And that's why in German they're called Jugendherberge, which means something to the effect of, basically, well, it translates as a youth hostel, I suppose. And your most traditional hostels typically had the age cutoff of 27 years old, except for family rooms for people who were hiking or trying to travel within an economical format, a very stripped down way of doing it. And I believe that in the past you used to bring your own bedding, but in the last 10 or 20 years that's become very verboten as the fear of bed bugs has spread, particularly in Canada. Canadians are really freaked out by bed bugs. But this time of year is really typical for staying in hostels, and that's partly why I want to address it right now, because a lot of people are doing this for the first time after they graduate from university or grad school. And in those 65 hostels, I have really only once had what I would consider a somewhat dangerous situation, which you can read about at my link below. I don't want to repeat myself, from my website, where you can find a little story or series of anecdotes about it. But hostels are a very important part of global society, in my opinion, because you'll encounter information there much quicker than you'll know about global events just from a news context. I will say that they are becoming slightly, well, not just slightly, overtly monoculture. There are about 5 nations that are extremely overrepresented in hostels, and that would be Germans, Canadians, Australians, French, and to some extent British and American tourists, depending on where you go. Americans are underrepresented proportionally for a population this size because we are used to traveling in packaged formats to Disney World or a cruise where you only meet other people of a similar cultural background. And as you'll see from the article that I have, you really don't see as many Chinese or Russians because of really strict visa requirements. And in the case of Russia, I believe it's a little bit of, there's a little bit of difficulty getting currency exchanged from rubles into other currencies, unless that's changed in the last year or two. At any rate, I very much recommend traveling in hostels because of the kind of exposure you'll get that you won't get in other places. And I've spent a minimum of $8.50 a night. I think the most I've ever spent was $41 or $42 a night in Washington, D.C. at a hostel run by Quakers that really were running a pretty shoddy place, in my opinion. It's also where I first really came into contact with the truther movement, the actual or more likely version of events that happened at 9/11, something I found out from a Mexican traveler in Madrid about 6 years ago. And I think it's just an essential part of your formative years, whether that be your early teens or as late as your 40s, 50s, or beyond. I think that the first time you travel in such a place, you might really want to have somebody you are acquainted with there with you just to sort of walk you through. And theft issues do happen if you're not really cognizant of where things are. I have a tendency to repeat the mantra that I learned from the BBC's Absolutely Fabulous, where Jennifer Saunders' character used to say, as many of you know, tickets, money, passport. And I add to that camera, laptop. Tickets, money, passport, camera, laptop, and in some cases a phone. If you have those 5 or 6 items, really everything else you can afford to lose. And usually you can lock them up or keep them in the safe. And there are so many different variables at work here that I could tell you, but it's just something that has to come out in time. But don't be afraid to do that, and it's better that you get out of your own culture's norms to figure out what's going on, especially with the forces that are changing economically and politically in the world. As always, I appreciate you watching, and I hope you do end up going to a hostel. And please subscribe and look back through my catalog from my travels last year, because there are a lot of little snippets and anecdotes that come up as you go. Thanks for watching. Bye.